What's up, my party people? I'm back again. It's been a while. Today, I talk with Frank Martin. Check it out. Hey, guys, welcome to the show. Frank Martin. Frank, how are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me on, chatting.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on. So, you're a comic book writer?
I try to be. I'm not sure I'm that good at it, but
I listen. I like the stuff. I like the stuff you sent me, and you're solely on Kickstarter. Is that right?
I mean, I got a couple books with publishers that come into the direct market every now and then, but
Hmm.
for the most part, I do 6 Kickstarter launches a year, so it's kind of the way I put my craziness out into the world.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I feel like that's such I feel like it's still an untapped resource for creators. Like I know there's a million Kickstarter projects out there, especially with comic books, but you're putting out quality stuff, and I'm excited to see the next project that you said is launching on Monday, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's weird doing these shows and stuff because every time
Hmm.
I do one, it's like a little closer. It's like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
say
yeah.
it's going to be in July, then it's going to be in 2 weeks, then it's
Mhm.
Monday. Holy crap, it's Monday. So,
So walk me through it. Walk me through the process. What's it called? Like, where can people find it? What are the search
sure.
terms? And then I'll put
This
that all that stuff in the summary of this episode also.
sure. Anybody that follows my work knows that I'm a bit all over the place. They could never quite know what I'm going to do next because I just kind of follow my muse. And that's the great thing about Kickstarter. When you're not working with a publisher and you have to
Hmm.
answer to somebody, you could kind of just do whatever crazy thoughts pop in your head. And this book is a little crazy. It's a little weird. It's called The Fourth Wallflower. The general premise is that an unseen comic creator, I guess behind the fourth wall, creates a comic character, and right from the beginning, the comic character is self-aware. He knows he's a
Hmm.
comic character. He knows he's in a comic story, and he has a dialogue with his creator about what the story is going to be, and it just kind
Hmm.
of unfolds from there. So it's a fun exercise in storytelling, in meta fourth wall breaking, and it's one of those things I'm not sure. Like, if I look at a publisher with it, they'll be like, this is a very cool thing. I have no idea how to sell this to anybody. So, the great thing about Kickstarter is
Hmm.
I don't have to rely on a publisher to do that.
Yeah, I dug it. You sent me the preview. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really dug the story and the art. Now as a Kickstarter creator, I'm gonna butcher his name. I believe the guy you did this book with.
Ramiro Borallo.
Yes, Ramiro Borallo, and you've worked with him a few times, right?
I've worked with him once before. He did the P1 Nokia story for my Grim Space series,
Okay.
and he did a great job at that. He captured the perfect tone of
Hmm.
Pinocchio, this fun, adventurous sci-fi character. And I knew picking an artist for this book was going to be a challenge. Sometimes I develop a story from scratch with an artist.
Hmm.
This one was the main character of the book, Wally. He just kind of infected my head, and I had to
Hmm.
write the script and then go out and find an artist to bring him to life, because it's not an easy thing to do, to capture
Hmm.
that whimsy of a comic character who knows he's a comic character. But Ramiro immediately came to mind, and I asked him about this probably like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. I wrote the script a while ago, and he said, "Man,
Hmm.
I'm super booked. I don't know if I could get to this." And I said, "You're it. So however long it takes you to start, I'm gonna wait." So I think it was worth it because I think he knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. I like the term you used of whimsy. I think that's very hard for artists to accomplish, regardless of how long they've been doing this. Like those first few panels where you see the character being created, I feel like was more of like a classic animation style, you know?
So when I first wrote this, it got a couple script critiques from some people,
Mhm.
and one comic bro, he said, "Oh, this is Duck Amuck in comics, pretty cool." And I'm like, "Duck Amuck, I don't know what that is." So I YouTubed it, and it's a Warner Brothers cartoon short with Looney Tunes, I guess, Daffy Duck, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Somebody draws Daffy Duck on, I
Mhm.
guess, animation, and he has a, I guess, fourth wall dialogue with the animator a little bit about what the
Right.
story is going to be. So it was cool that I completely copied that without even realizing it, but it does give a good reference for what
Uh-huh.
type of story is and what type of feel it is. And yeah, it does have that little animation feel to it that is not easy to pull off. You know, artists
Yeah.
get in their lanes and they want to do their specific things, and this has to be light and fun, yet at the same time profound. There are some really heavy
Hmm.
moments in the story, and he hit the pacing just right with everything.
Yeah, like I said, I really dug it. I'm looking forward to it. So that's funny with I remember very clearly now that cartoon, and
Now that I
because
bring it up.
I think it was like I think it's an unfair comparison, to be honest,
Okay.
because it's very different. I remember that because it was like it was a 3 minute short, and you can see the hand and the pencil,
Yeah.
and the more
Yes.
mouthy Daffy got, he'd get erased, or like his beak would go, I think his beak turned backwards or something like that.
I think from a narrative perspective,
Hmm.
it's not the same. But if I were to look at like some comparative story, some comp of
Yeah.
genre, that's really the only thing I can think of. You know, Wally's a meta character. He's a fourth
Hmm.
wall breaking character. And today, when everybody thinks of fourth wall breaking, they think of Deadpool, but it's completely different than
Right.
Deadpool. It's not even the same level of meta storytelling. So Wally is one of the person who read it who told me, he said this book is so meta that it's not meta anymore. It's just it's gone full circle. So yeah, I really had a lot of fun because it's super different.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good storytelling, and it's very compelling too. Like it's not a surface story. There's a lot of deepness to it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it's strange writing this because it's one of those things where there's a difference between a good idea and a good story, right?
Hmm.
I have good ideas 100 times a day, and then I
Sure.
think
Hmm.
about them for a story, and I'm like, no, that's terrible. But so
Hmm.
this was one that a fourth wall breaking, self-aware comic character. I had the idea,
Hmm.
but I didn't really have a story, and there you can't really gauge what this story is in the
Hmm.
first couple of panels or even pages because even Wally doesn't know. He's like, what type of story am I in? And full disclosure, I didn't know what type of story he was in
Hmm.
until I started writing it. So we had this cool relationship I had with this fictional character that as I'm scripting it, I'm coming up with the story at the same time. And eventually it does hit its flow and it does have some real tear-jerking emotional moments. And I'm proud of the way that we kind of like wrapped it up in the end and put a nice, neat bow on this weird meta style story.
That's really cool. I also felt like there was maybe like a little bit of commentary within the pages, right? Like, because there's, like you were saying, there's one, like he's walking through his own creation, and there's one, I think, set of 4 panels where he sees like a western, like another town or something, like, and he's like, no, this is no, you don't want to go
It,
through those like same tropes.
yeah. So as I build the story, I kind of take the
Mhm.
reader through the various building blocks of storytelling, right? We need character,
Mhm.
we need tone. That part you were talking about, that's the setting. He's like, where does it take
Right,
place?
yeah.
And it's funny you mention that because now that I'm doing marketing for this book, I could utilize Wally
Mhm.
as kind of a little bit of a marketing tool. And he is my inner voice that allows me to say things out loud that I wouldn't normally say, you
Mhm.
know? And it's that commentary that you were talking about, commentary on me and the
Mhm.
comics industry and just everything. So for instance, I'm doing a whole bunch of I got two kind of cool covers that are kind of standard covers, and then I'm doing a cover that's just Wally by himself talking to the potential, I guess, customer
Mhm.
about variant covers. You know, he's like, this is a variant cover. It's not much to it, but let's be real, variants are a gimmick anyway. You know, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I get to do all those cool little commentative tidbits that I wouldn't
Mhm.
personally say, but Wally gets to be my voice for, which is it's a lot of fun.
You're the ventriloquist.
kinda, kinda,
uh,
yeah.
did you grow up a comic book fan?
I did. I did. I think I was like, I would call myself a casual comic fan. I would like occasionally grab one off the spinner rack in the 90s. And it wasn't, I got hooked into Marvel's big ultimate gimmick that they
Okay.
just, that's where I hook, line, and sinker. That was when the addiction began. And from there, I fell right into their marketing scheme of transitioning to the 616 and then eventually with DC doing New 52 again, another marketing gimmick
Yeah.
hooked me with them. So yeah, I've always read comics, and I think that's why I love this story so much, because
Hmm.
I feel it's for people that like comics. Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily, doesn't have to appeal to rom-com or comedy fans, even though that's what it is. But it's just people that are into that sequential storytelling, will whether it be horror or fantasy or whatever. That type of storytelling is what people are going to get a kick out of with this book.
Oh yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I feel like that's always a good thing. If you're making comics that for comic book fans, you always win. I feel because I like there. I feel like if somebody's listening to this, it's hard. It will be a little hard to understand what we're talking about. But I feel like if you get previews every month, like the big thick ordering book, there is not to poo poo on anybody, but there is garbage. It's loaded with stuff that's just terrible. And I always think to myself, like, who's buying this? Like, is it somebody who thinks they want to get into comics and then they're presented with like nonsense? It's very layered. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, let's just say, a lot of people put out books and take a financial hit on them.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So people make books, and really, as long as you got skin in the game, you can
Hmm.
get into previews, but that doesn't mean that your book is going to be a success or people are going to buy it. So, and yeah, it's tough to stand out. There's so many stories out there
Oh yeah.
that tick so many boxes of fantasy and horror, and there's so many high concepts that it's hard to really grab people's attention. And not that that's my ultimate goal. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just making comics to please myself for an audience of one at this point.
Hmm.
But I do feel that the Fourth Wallflower is one of those books where it's hard to find something like it. It's kind
Yeah.
of in a league of its own, not necessarily in how good or bad it is, but it's in a league in its own as far as genre and narrative style and all that stuff.
Well, because if do you would you consider this just like the one shot? Like this is the one and done? Because I feel like it has the potential to be like an ongoing, especially if the character's self-aware, and then the next story arc could, you could give him superpowers at one point.
It, I get that question a lot. I do a lot of
Hmm.
one shots, and because I have kind of writer ADD, I'm all over the place. I'm like, I just want to do
Hmm.
this one story and then do another thing and then another thing and then another thing. It's hard for me to carry over. People love a
Hmm.
lot of the books I put out, which is great. And they say, "Is this a follow up?" I'm like, I don't really have plans for a follow up, but I never say never to anything.
Hmm.
In 2020, I put out a book called The Macabre Motel that people really liked, and that was supposed to be a one and done. And I had no plans for a sequel. And then last year, an idea hit
Hmm.
me, and now I'm putting out a follow up this year. So, kind of the same thing with Wally. He has potential. I get that question all the time, and I would love to do it, but
Hmm.
it the idea has to come before the intention of making it.
Right.
I
Right.
can't,
Right.
especially with something like this, when things are meta, people can tell right off the bat when it's forced. When you're set out to make a meta book, it's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
meta book. It needs to form naturally. It needs to come naturally. So possibly, but not at it's not on the plate at this time.
All right. And you said this is your fourth Kickstarter project.
Oh, this might be my 24th Kickstarter
24th.
project.
Okay. Okay.
I lost count. I think this is my fourth this year.
Okay. Okay.
Is it?
I think that's
Yeah.
what you said at the beginning. Yeah, you said this is your fourth this year. So, are you at this point doing Kickstarter full time, or is there like a day job involved?
I do a lot of writing for different things
Okay.
that kind of help pay the bills. But it kind of is a full-time job, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I'm
That's awesome.
never
No.
it is, because it's like I enjoy doing it. So
Mhm.
I never count the hours that I'm doing it. So when people say
Right.
I had an 18-hour day, I'm just like, okay, if I'm awake, I am doing something comic related, you know? And
Right.
my wife can't stand it because we're walking or we're driving, and she'll be talking to me, and I'm just like, uh-huh, yeah. And then but in my head, I'm plotting out another
Mhm.
issue. So she has to constantly, are you listening to me? Yeah, honey, I'm listening to
Mhm.
you, but I need to make sure this page turn works.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's when you put out 6 books a year, you're constantly either editing something or lettering something or approving
Mhm.
art or writing something or posting about something. So it's um this comic game, man, it's a cruel mistress. It's demanding.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. So how do you, as a creator who is on Kickstarter, how do you generally hook up with the artists that you use?
Oh, it's twofold. It's either I use a lot of past artists. Once
Mhm.
you have a good relationship with someone, you don't want to go through the process of courting somebody else and not
Right.
sure how it's going to work out. So I do use a lot of people that I've worked with in the past. I try not to post online. I did that a lot in the beginning, but you
Mhm.
get inundated with so many artists who don't even read your post. And
Right, right,
you
right.
say, I'm making a horror book, and somebody says, I'm a children's artist and make children's books. I'm like, no, like it's not what I was looking for.
Right,
So
right, right, right.
I do a lot of stalking, stalk other
Okay.
people's
Sure.
stalk other
You're talking
people's
about the
posts.
artists, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's strictly art. It's just strictly for the art.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like seeing when other people make posts looking for stuff, and then everybody comments, and then I go through
Mhm.
that, so I don't get the
That's smart. That's
notification. Yeah,
pretty
I don't
smart.
get the
Yeah.
notifications for it. But yeah, I'm in a lot of art groups. People love posting their stuff,
Mhm.
and that's how you kind of find your little diamond in the rough. Sometimes somebody who'll be a
Yeah.
perfect fit, just spending, I don't know, 10-15 minutes just going through Instagram, looking at artists and just seeing somebody who catches your eye. And
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's I have a project, I need a very particular art style, and other times it's just, what, I'm just going to be out on the prowl looking for
Mhm.
somebody, and if their art catches me, I'll try to build something from scratch with them that fits their particular style. I did a book this year in January, is called Where the Nightmares Are,
Mhm.
and it was a all ages horror spin on where the wild things are. And I had the idea, but I never really pursued it until I saw a particular artist, and he had a
Mhm.
very whimsical, fantastical style that really transported somebody to a kid's horror world. And so that I built the project around them because they just fit it, So when you get that nice match, it works out perfectly.
Yeah. And what are I know it's like this next question um is probably a very common one, but I want to know what are some of your influences as a writer, be it comic books or outside of the realm of comic books, fiction,
I
nonfiction.
I do hate this question because
Mhm.
I consume a lot of media. I
Yeah.
read a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of movies, and I watch a lot of different things.
Right.
So I'll watch a lot of comedy. I'll watch horror, action, fantasy. I just like consuming stuff because I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
as a writer, the more stuff you consume, we're never really creating anything original, right? We're
Mhm.
copying from somewhere. So the more stuff I consume, the more stuff I can throw in my storytelling blender and come up with something that looks unique or original.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
So, but you know what? The answer I love giving to this question is, are you afraid of the dark?
Okay.
And the reason I love that is because I watched it religiously as a kid.
Okay.
Snick. It was the 9:30
Mhm.
time slot. I remember specifically. I watched it in my parents' bed,
Mhm.
and it's horror based. That's kind of the spookiness of it, is where
Mhm.
it's firmly rooted, and that's me. I love horror. Horror is, I feel, is my comfort food. That's my home base.
Sure.
But Are You Afraid of the Dark was all over the place in terms
Yeah.
of its secondary genres. It was, some of them were comedy, some of them were fantasy, some of them were
Mhm.
science fiction, some of them were like slasher-ish. So to see something rooted in one thing, right? Are You Afraid of the
Right.
Dark, telling scary stories, have such a wide spectrum of what it can accomplish.
Yeah.
To me, growing up as a writer, I feel like I can do that too. I don't have to be one thing. I don't have to
Mhm.
be just this. I can touch upon all these different
Yeah.
elements in books, and sometimes I can mix and match them. And having that, growing up watching that and enjoying that and understanding that that can happen, has, I guess, influenced a lot of the stuff that I put out.
That's really cool. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use "Are You Afraid of the Dark" as like an influence on their work, which is pretty awesome. I didn't have cable growing up, so a lot of stuff that I've not seen ever. and it drives my wife completely bananas, because she'd be like, "Oh, you never saw this when you were a kid?" I'm like, "No, like I don't know what this is." It just reminded me of I did watch Tales from the Crypt when I was a kid, like the TV show, and it kind of
Mm,
it sounds very similar, where like each episode you don't really you're getting something a little spooky, but you don't know what you're gonna get.
yeah, I love those kind of that anthology style. And growing up, I was a Blockbuster kid too. So
Oh yeah,
they don't really do it as much anymore, but in the late 80s and the 90s, there was a ton of horror anthology movies that came
yeah,
out.
yeah.
And so seeing those quick short stories that were part of a bigger thing, that too might have fueled my
Hmm.
need to make all these kind of one and done one shots and scratch that storytelling itch before move on to something else.
I gotta say, I do miss the Blockbuster video on the video stores.
It was an experience,
Mhm.
it's kind of replicates that comic shop high you get, when you walk
Yeah,
in and you browse the titles. You never know what you're going to get. You could pick and choose. I mean, it's not the same being on the couch and just going like this through
yeah,
Netflix. It's definitely not. It doesn't. You don't get that same dopamine hit, you
yeah.
know.
You don't get the dopamine hit, and also there's a sense of accomplishment too. And it's kind of funny because people complain so much now about how many subscription services they have. But I remember on a Saturday, like every Saturday, I could easily drop like $30-$40 at the video store, to just get anything I wanted to see, and then just like the entire weekend would be spent watching like every Jason movie or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I remember
yeah,
the big thing about Blockbuster was you could tell how popular a movie was going to be by how many copies they ordered.
right,
Right. So
right.
if there's like sometimes you have some B movies and they got like three or four and you're like, I'll
Mhm.
pass. And then you turn and then some big summer blockbuster movie and it took up the entire shelf.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody tried to like get that copy before they were all gone. And here I am in the horror section, like renting Ghoulies for the fourth time.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, like the $2 horror section.
Yeah.
The I remember very vividly that the my Blockbuster had the giant wall for Speed, the Keanu Reeves movie, and I remember like thinking like, man, that's a lot of VHS copies, because it's like it's surreal. Folks now wouldn't understand that,
No.
Um,
Blockbuster was an experience. The video store in general was just awesome. I loved
yeah,
my favorite section was sci-fi
mhm,
because there was only so many categories, right? There's no
right,
cyberpunk or grim dark section. It was
right, yeah,
you had drama, comedy, horror, maybe like an action section and then sci-fi. And
yeah,
sci-fi was like the miscellaneous. You had Godzilla, you had
mhm,
Star Trek. It was just like
yeah.
anything where they couldn't fit it somewhere else, it went into sci-fi. So I love the eclecticness of that section.
Yeah, and plus you'd find like really bizarre movies, like hidden gems. I remember when Jurassic Park came out on VHS, another movie came out called Carnosaur.
Oh,
Also
I
hit,
remember Carnosaur. They had some
yeah.
sequels too.
Yeah, there was a bunch of Carnosaurs, and also like, if you wanted to watch RoboCop, right next to RoboCop was Maniac Cop, which was also like another nutty movie, which I love that movie actually. I watched it, I recently rewatched it and I was like, you know what, this is great. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I was a big Full Moon fan. Like that's how Blockbuster got me into the Full Moon
Yeah.
movies, like Arcade and Puppet Master and Subspecies and all those
Oh
movies.
yeah, yeah.
They were like, I don't know, I fell in love with those cheesy B movies that knew
Mhm.
exactly what they were and leaned into it hard, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because now you can find all this stuff online for free, probably.
Yeah.
Um, so what's the goal? What's the goal here
With the goal with what?
with writing comics? Like, where do you
Writing
see yourself?
comics.
Yeah.
God, is there a goal? I mean, I do wanna live out the fantasy of writing all of the characters that we grew up loving. I would love
Yeah.
to put my fingerprints on all those, the little guy. I want the little guys too, the man
Hmm.
things. And there was a character I grew up in the 2000s called Gravity. I would love to write. And also the big
Hmm.
guys, Spider-Man, Batman, but those are so daunting
Yeah.
nowadays.
Oh
Those
yeah.
those creators are getting ripped to shreds on Twitter. So I'm just like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I really want to write Spidey,
I 100% firmly believe that the people who take a dump on comic books on Twitter do not read books every week. I think it's just like a couple of haters and some burner accounts,
Mm,
and like I
it's
again like I also have a high tolerance for this kind of stuff. Like I'm an avid current comic book reader, like pretty everything, right? Like Marvel, DC, Indies, all that stuff. And I think I have good taste, but sometimes I'd see like the comments that like a Dan Slott would get or anybody else who's writing a giant book, and
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, just shut up and enjoy it, man. Like
Mm.
they're not gonna be on the book forever. And also, I feel like if you question these people and say, what's your ideal story? It's gonna be terrible. Number one, the guy's probably gonna have Wolverine claws, and there will probably be like some kind of venom attribute to whatever character they write.
Well, there's a reason people are writers, and there's a reason people are readers.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's. I remember. I forget who said this to Chip Zdarsky when he first started writing Batman. Somebody tweeted at him and said, "Congratulations, Chip. I hope you do well writing for the comic character that has the most stories written about him in the history of fiction." It's kind of
Huh.
like, whoa, how much originality can you do with Spider-Man? He's
Hmm.
been around for decades, and it's not just Amazing Spider-Man. He's been in so many spin-offs
Yeah.
and miniseries. It's like trying to be original with these guys. It's tough. I don't really envy the job that they have. I mean, I would like
Yeah.
to give it a shot. I might do terrible. But seriously, I follow Nick Lowe, the editor for Spider-Man, and
Hmm.
he posts every week about these are the books that are coming out in the Spidey office, and every week people comment on his tweets, just like tearing into him, and I'm just like, this guy must have be either never just post and then completely turn it off, or he's must have ice water in his veins because
Yeah.
I would fall apart with all these things that these people say.
I always think about that, and I think about like I have like this very dopey fanboy romantic fantasy in my head of I wonder if people used to handwrite letters to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee complaining about shit. You know? And I feel like Jack Kirby would probably take one look at it, crumple it up, and just throw it in the trash.
It's hard. When I first started writing, you're making yourself vulnerable. You're creating
Yeah.
essentially a baby, and you're putting out in the world, and people are stomping on your baby. It hurts. It
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
does, especially in the beginning. And a lot of those novice writers, they get very defensive. Uh, but you do grow a little bit of a thick skin for these type of things. You're like, dude, I've written 100 stories before this. I'm gonna write another 100 more after this. I can't live or die on your thoughts for this one thing. So
Right.
I
Right.
do understand that mindset, and for me, I'm working on ideas that I'm planning to launch years from now. So
Mhm.
if I'm putting something out now and people are crapping on it, I'm like, dude, I forgotten about this a year ago. Like it's in the past. I'm already
Mhm.
focused on the future. So I like that concept of looking ahead. I make something, I put it out. You like it, you don't like it, cool. It's on to the next.
Yeah, exactly. You got to keep a cool head about whatever you do, especially now, because like everybody's on the internet, which means if you're on the internet, somebody's gonna try to dump all over you. That's just how it goes, unfortunately. No, there's no encouragement. Very rare. You'll get encouragement from your community and your colleagues and your contemporaries, but I also feel like everybody else is just out to get everybody else. It's very sad.
That's the weird paradox of being a writer, is that you want to
Mhm.
write to fulfill yourself. You don't want to care what anybody thinks. You want to write a story for you, an audience of
Right.
one, and yet you want everybody to love it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's this weird dichotomy. And I so people say you can't write a story that everyone is going to like.
Mhm.
But I think I'm bouncing all over the place. I would love to write stories that I could make everybody like, if that makes sense,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe that's my goal with trying to do so many different things, is check so many different boxes to like have a story that at least some person can say, I like this Frank Martin story. Not that somebody will
Mhm.
say, I don't like any of his stuff. You have to have one. I'm gonna write one for everybody.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good goal too. And you also don't know. Here's the other thing about the internet. You also don't know if the person who's trying to take the wind out of your sails is a 10-year-old or a 90-year-old. you know, like because if it's usually folks with like fake avatars, right?
Mm-mm.
Never anybody like I've never really seen anybody who has a real picture of themselves who comments harshly on Twitter, let's say, you know, like that doesn't exist. It's always like a
They,
Sheena of
they,
the jungle avatar is some nonsense. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. You got me distracted with Sheena the. I yeah, you just kind of have to move on. It's
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough because I like listening to what people say though. A lot of people get defensive, and
Right.
I think
Right.
I think I'm at the point where if you don't like my story, I want
Mhm.
to know why. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want you to say it sucks and it was stupid. Like that doesn't really help me. But I'm curious, like what
Hmm.
didn't you vibe with? It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to change the story to appease you, but
Right.
it's always helpful knowledge to have as long
Yeah.
as
For
they're courteous about it, which is few and far between these days.
right. You know, it's unfortunate, but you know, like obviously keep doing what you're doing, man. Like it's fantastic that you have all these projects in the works and have had a ton of funded projects also. Let's wrap it up, Frank. So Monday, big day.
Yeah, that's the fourth waffle hour drops on Kickstarter.
Cool. And people could just search Frank Martin and the fourth wallflower.
Yeah, I am all over social media. At Frank the Writer is my handle on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. FrankTheWriter.com is my website. My mailing list is the best way to stay up to date with what I do. I send out bi-monthly emails talking about projects. Sometimes I send out free stories. But chances are, if you stumble upon Frank Martin Comics somewhere on Google, you'll see it. It's I think that's the goal. If you search your name in comic books as a creator and the book is not popping up, then you have some work to do. No.
Right, 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 right. But yeah, man, listen, good luck with the launch on Monday. This will be out before that, and you know, hopefully we can send some more backers your way.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. It's I love this story. I had a good time writing it, and I hope people enjoy it.
Very cool, man. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
That was fantastic. Guys, go to the Kickstarter, go fund that book. It's going to be a lot of fun. Support your indie creators, support your comic creators, and I will see you soon. Much love.